is CBS 2 News.
Yes, it's not easy being green. We'll show you green lunches. Also at moving day for New York City Landmark. The building you did see moving down the street, that actually happened. It wasn't the night before. It moved down the street. It once belonged to a founding father, and this weekend, after 200 years, a historic Harlem house has a new home. The National Park Service moved the former home of Alexander Hamilton. He's not around to see it, but from 141st Street at Convent Avenue, 1 block away to St. Nicholas Park. The delicate journey needed a massive dolly. Not Dolly Parton. It took 3 years, or 3 hours actually, to make the trip.
I have to admit I was chewing my nails a bit as it came down the hill. It was a remarkable sight, but there wasn't a single hitch.
Mary says 3 years to plan it. That's probably about true. And Dolly is massive. The National Park Service is restoring the Hamilton home. Plans to reopen it to the public in 2009.
You're watching NBC for New York.
Neighborhood activists in Upper Manhattan are trying to stop a big move. Tomorrow, National Park Service crews plan to move Alexander Hamilton's yellow mansion a few blocks to St. Nicholas Park. The nation's first Treasury Secretary lived in the house more than 200 years ago. Next year, it'll open as a museum. But activists want the house to face a different direction, so they filed a lawsuit today. The Park Service wants the front door to face the street. Neither side will budge, so they return to court Monday.
A 200-year-old Manhattan house that once belonged to founding father Alexander Hamilton is on the move, but it's going very slowly. The Greek-style home known as Hamilton Grange is set to get a facelift because it can't be restored in its current location. On June 7th, it'll be driven to nearby St. Nicholas Park, where the renovations will take place. But first, it has to be lifted some 35 feet in the air, slid out to the street, and then lowered again onto some dollies. This is actually the second time the home is being moved.
It was constructed about two blocks up the street on the Crown of Manhattan in 1802, and it was moved here in 1889 as Manhattan was moving north, and it, in effect, was saved from demolition. The church took it in 1889, and along with a piece of property, and they moved it over here, used it as a rectory for a while, and then built the church next to it.
Alexander Hamilton was the nation's first Secretary of the Treasury. He also founded the New York Post. Hamilton was killed in 1804 in a duel with Aaron Burr.
You're watching NBC for New York.
It was moving day for a 200-year-old house that once belonged to our first Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. It was moved from one part of Manhattan to another today. Diana Rossini reports.
It's not something you see every day, a 2-century-old historic house elevated on wheels and on the move.
The house is moving.
The wooden home that once belonged to founding father Alexander Hamilton, the face you see on a $10 bill, will eventually be restored and turned into a museum. But first...
So in order to restore it to what it looked like when he built it, when he lived in it, we needed to be able to put in a site in which we could put the front porch back on, the back porch back on.
So this morning, the house went from Convent Avenue off 141st Street in Hamilton Heights to its new destination, less than a block away at St. Nicholas Park. Engineers jacked it up on this massive dolly and drove it about 800 feet. After a hard left, a tough right, and not exactly flying, the house landed.
We came around the corner to see it, and it's just totally exciting.
Diana Rossini, News 4 New York.
You're watching NBC for New York.
An historic mansion in Manhattan is going to be on the move this weekend. It's the building that Alexander Hamilton called home in the early 1800s. Right now it's on Convent Avenue in Hamilton Heights. It was first moved from its original site on West 143rd Street in 1869 to avoid demolition. Tomorrow morning it's going to be moved again, this time just about 2 blocks away to St. Nicholas Park.
We'll start around 7:30 and be on site anytime between 1 and 2 o'clock. But it'll be fun to watch. It's not often that you see yellow house driving down the street of Manhattan.
No, you don't. The Park Service plans to open the mansion to the public as a museum next year.
You're watching New York One News all weekend.
After a lot of twists and turns, the house of founding father Alexander Hamilton is finally on solid ground again. Our Stephanie Simon has more.
Preservation and perseverance. Inch by inch, Alexander Hamilton's house slowly made its way from 141st Street and Convent Avenue to its new home just around the corner at St. Nicholas Park. The National Park Service is overseeing the move of this historic landmark.
There are 9 independent dollies. They each have their own motors and own braking system, and they're remote controlled. But actually, both the dollies and the remote control device was designed and built by the move company.
The movers are German Baptist brethren from Pennsylvania. They dress similar to the Amish, but use the most high-tech machinery. This is not the first time the home has been moved. Back in 1889, the house, known as the Grange, was moved from its original site at 143rd Street to save it from demolition.
In the site that it's been sitting in up until now, it's been squeezed in with its porches cut off and its front door moved to its side and so forth. And in the new location, we'll be able to reestablish all the original architectural features. And as people come up the street, 141st Street, they'll be able to see Hamilton's front door.
But not everyone agrees the front of the house should face the street. A community group has filed a lawsuit to force the National Park Service to situate the house facing southwest, the way it was in its original location, instead of northeast. The case is scheduled to be heard in Manhattan federal court on Monday. Hamilton biographer Richard Brookhiser says he doesn't consider which way the home faces to be a major concern.
The fact that the house has already been moved once, unfortunately destroys any authenticity issue. So as long as we're not moving it to Queens, I don't care so much.
I really think this is a better spot for it. It's now more in the open. It's where people can see that they can put it back to the way it originally was. And it's just exciting. It's amazing what they did today, really.
When the house reopens to the public sometime next summer or fall after renovation, it will feature an exhibition on the move, and that will include time-lapse photography of the entire process. The house is not scheduled to be moved onto its new foundation for at least another week. In Hamilton Heights, Stephanie Simon, New York 1.
Eyewitness News at 11.
Up next, relocating history, why more than 280 tons of American history are moved through Harlem.
People often move homes, but today in Harlem, it was the actual house that did the moving. The so-called Grange house was the country home of Alexander Hamilton, one of the country's founding fathers. It was built in 1802, and today it was moved about 500 feet from cramped quarters on Convent Avenue to a leafier area around the corner at St. Nicholas Park. And by the way, this was not the first time Hamilton's house was moved.
This is CBS 2 News.
It once belonged to a founding father, and today, after 200 years, a historic Harlem house has a new home. This morning, the National Parks Service moved the former home of Alexander Hamilton from 141st Street at Covenant Avenue, 1 block away to St. Nicholas Park. The delicate journey needed a massive dolly. Massive is to say the least, and it took 3 hours to make the trip.
I have to admit I was chewing my nails a bit as it came down the hill. It was a remarkable sight, but there wasn't a single hitch.
No doubt. The National Park Service is restoring the Hamilton home and plans to reopen it to the public in 2009. And Jim, our floor guy, was telling me this is the second time that this home is.
Keep moving it.
Yeah, they just keep moving it.
There's one day to be out there, boy.
Oof.
Those workers.
No
Hot.
doubt.
In the 90s.